Hello, I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and welcome to Surviving Bad, where we explore Iowa's stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. Today we're going to learn about House of Hope, where they are empowering at-risk young women and helping them break the cycle of poverty and homelessness. Things many of us take for granted can be significant barriers to life. With a little help from the friends at House of Hope, those barriers can come down. Let's meet our guests, Dusky, Megan, and Brooke. Welcome to the show. Let's get us started. Dusky, tell us a little bit about House of Hope and what it does and what it's about.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us, first of all. So House of Hope provides single mothers who are in homelessness and young women who age out of foster care with transitional housing and case management and programming and access to resources and services so that they can achieve true independence and permanent homes for their families.
Now, many people aren't really aware of these things that are going on in our communities. It's sort of an invisible side of the world, and maybe some of it's stigma because people don't want to see that. Brooke, you've been in social work for a while. What sort of is the framework? How hard is it to find the kind of connections you need to help House of Hope do this?
So your question, so how do you find the connections you need to
how do you build this repertoire to help everybody out and find the right people that need help?
Well, the right people that need help, a lot of folks are referred to us or kind of walk through our doors. Women and children in particular are our largest number of homeless population in Iowa and around the country. So a lot of families find us because they're couch surfing. Some families are in unhealthy environments. Sometimes there's violence involved, and really just a lot of barriers, like Dusky had shared, that a lot of families have to overcome in order to find that safe, stable housing, employment, and quality childcare. And I will add to that, too, that people do not have trouble finding us. In fact, our waiting list hovers around 100 families long at any given time. So if anything, we could use several more houses of hope. Yeah.
So there is a lot of demand. And is this primarily women that are aging out of foster care, or are there other sort of pipelines into your system?
Well, it's single mothers is primarily, that's probably our biggest service area. And then women who age out of foster care, we've started that program in 2018 in response to that being a barrier that most of the women that we serve in our single mother program. So we kind of wanted to be on the preventative side of things and help prevent those women from falling through the cracks. We can serve 5 women at a time in our Pillars program. It's called Pillars, the women who age out of foster care.
So Brooke, when you're working with these populations and you recognize that it's primarily women with children, I'm sitting here and I've done this show for years. I guess I've never really thought about the fact that the homeless population in Iowa has many more women and children in it than men. It doesn't look that way when you see it on the news.
Right. So the face of homelessness really isn't that individual sleeping under a bridge. It's much more women and their children that are couch surfing. It's maybe a woman that's in a relationship that just turned not so healthy, even if it's, it might not be a physically abusive relationship, but it might be emotionally abusive. And then they might move into their own apartment, and then maybe kiddo gets sick, and then mom misses work and pretty soon can't pay rent. And so then she may move in with another extended family member. But what we discover is if a woman is continually dependent upon who she's living with for her housing, then it really sets up some unhealthy relationship dynamics. So then if she's dependent on childcare, if she's dependent on housing, then she really doesn't have her power, her voice to even make some safety choices for her and her children.
And you really have a methodology for giving women that power and voice in terms of teaching.
Yeah, we really strive to break down barriers with families that come to House of Hope. So we are not just a shelter. We aren't a shelter in general. We're really a program. So we really work with women so that they have their power back, so that they can afford quality childcare, so that they can take care of their credit, so that they can pay off old fines, so that they can find housing, reliable, safe housing. Transportation is another huge barrier. So they can work towards getting that car that's safe and reliable, so that the basic needs that they can meet on their own, and then they don't need to be reliable on another individual who may or may not become healthy or may become an unhealthy relationship.
You know, it seems a bit sad that we have such a large waiting list for your services. What happens to women that are on that list?
Well, actually, we, in the last couple of years, we started an outreach program because we kept getting that question, like, what do you do for the women who are on the waiting list? And, we didn't have the resources to do much before, but now we have a case manager. Well, we have two case managers actually who reach out to the women who are on the waiting list who have fewer barriers. So, maybe they don't necessarily need to be in House of Hope, but like maybe they have a car or maybe they have a job, but they are losing their homes, or maybe they have lost their home and they're staying with somebody else. And then our case managers work with them to get them stabilized till an apartment opens up here, or ideally they don't need us at all.
Well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to introduce Megan, who has her own view of House of Hope, and is also a participant in helping other women go through your system. See you all after the break. You don't want to miss this.
The black truck? Hey, Christina from accounting.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, I used to date a girl named Christina.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then she dumped me for my best friend. You want to see some photos of them that I took?
I don't.
I thought we talked about this, buddy.
Buzzed and overshared again?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna call a car.
That's a smart idea.
So yeah, I know, that's why I did it.
Hey, you're gonna get back to the top of the mountain.
Does that mean I'm gonna get back with Christina?
No.
Oh.
No.
Every second, 127 new devices connect to the internet. You can feel it happening. Our digital world expanding with every breath. We're entering a whole new era of connectivity, and MediaCom will be ready to power it with one of the nation's first 10G platforms. We'll be bringing you more speed, more capacity, more security, and the power to do more than you ever dreamed possible.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back. Dad! You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. We're talking with Dusky, Megan, and Brooke from House of Hope. We've heard from Dusky and Brooke. Now we've got Megan, who has not only as a board member an active sort of supporting role in what's going on at House of Hope, but has a personal experience she can share that gives us an inside look at how House of Hope works. Megan, welcome to the show. Tell us your story.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. So I realized today that I entered the House of Hope 10 years ago, almost exactly to the month. And like Dusky and Brooke were saying, we weren't the typical homeless family. We never slept on the streets. We never slept in our car, but providing a safe, consistent home for my kids had just proven too much after my divorce. We moved back to town. I had 5 kids from my first marriage and moved back to be closer to family. But with 5 kids, couch surfing isn't exactly a fun experience. We moved probably 10 times in 3 years. We had some unsafe living conditions. We had some landlords that were less than stellar. And we just found ourselves at the end of it. We couldn't do it anymore. And so as kind of our last ditch effort, which in retrospect should have probably been the first place I checked into when we came back to town, but I walked into the doors of the House of Hope and said, hey, do you have a place for me and my 5 kids? If you don't, I got to keep walking. And the gal that was there said, sit down and talk. And I said, I don't have time to sit down and talk. I have 5 kids who need a place to sleep. And she said, sit down and talk. And that's the first time I had sat and cried about where I was, because I didn't have the affordability to just cry about where I was. I had 5 kids that were looking at me to provide housing and food and clothing. And so for 2 years, I had a place to cry and to process, and for my kids to cry and process over where we were. We had a chance to grow. And I think a lot of the women, when they move in there, they can't even put into words the barriers that they're experiencing. They don't understand what is going wrong in their life because they don't always come from a household or a family that shows them what success looks like. And so what Dusky and Brooke and Karen and Lisa and all of the great people at House of Hope do is sit down and talk to them. Where are you? Where do you want to be? And how can we get you there? And that's so amazing for women who don't have the time or the ability to just sit back and say, where do I want to be in 5 years? Like, I had never asked myself that question. I just knew I had to find a place in 2 days. That's all the further ahead I could look. And so our kids just grew and bloomed in the House of Hope. They got resources and services to help them evaluate their lives and who they are. And so since then, since that day, I've been active on the board. I've been an active committee member. I've helped mentor several women who are doing amazing things today, amazing things. And my kids have stayed active, helping with daycare pre-pandemic and other things. And it's something that you don't see until you know someone in there, and then you can't help but see it.
You know, I started thinking as you were talking about this word at risk and at risk young women. And it's fascinating because that risk isn't always visible to the people around you. It's, you know, you're dealing with the stresses of what happens today and tomorrow. As you said, not 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And I'm, you know, for the first time, I'm thinking that may be one of the most powerful definitions of at risk, is when you're just so focused on everything happening around you right now that you don't have a chance to sort of look ahead and think about other things that many of us take for granted. Now, in your work,
I think there's a shame involved there. As single mothers, we're supposed to be able to do everything. We're supposed to be the superhero. And when you can't, you feel very shameful, very embarrassed. And to ask for help as a single mom is almost unheard of. And so to realize you need help and to have people that offer that help with dignity is very important to our single mom population.
Yeah, I worked with a faith-based leader that said it's not single parenting that's bad. It's the fact that single parents don't have the resources they need to be able to do the parenting that they are capable of doing. And so I guess that House of Hope helps meet that connection for you.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel now, 10 years later? What would you have told yourself when you were first out there and almost, you know, like what was it like to find House of Hope? How did you encounter them? What were you negotiating in life that made you actually open that door?
Yeah, so I'd heard about the House of Hope from the time I came back 2 years prior to me entering the program. And I just never thought I was that girl. I could do it all. But my first husband wasn't paying child support. I was trying to continue to give my 5 kids the life that they had come to know and love in Cedar Rapids. And I just come to the end of it. And I decided that my pride is not as important as taking care of my children. And I think when I decided that, that's when I said, you know, the House of Hope, Lord, please let there be room at the House of Hope, because I had heard all these great things about the program, but just wasn't ready to say out loud, I'm a homeless single mother. And now looking back, that was 10 years ago, and we now own our own home. I'm remarried. The House of Hope came through and painted my youngest daughter's bedroom after we bought the house, a beautiful pink and gray, because if anyone knows from renting homes your entire life, all your walls are white, everything's white. And so she got pink and gray room. My other daughter had a purple room. It was great to finally be in a place that's ours forever and to give my kids that stability, because as I said, sometimes we can't put into words the barriers that are keeping us from going further than our parents went. But the House of Hope has given my children the chance to go way farther than I even imagined for myself. And so they forever have a place where they can come back to and call home now, which wasn't a possibility 10 years ago. I mean, we lived in probably 13 to 15 different places during their elementary and junior high years. So now we have a home, we have a family at the House of Hope where we know, whatever we need, whatever we can do to help, we have that connection. So it was completely life-changing for me, which was great, but more importantly for my children and for the generations that come after, because that's what the House of Hope is really there for. It's transforming families, but that also transforms our communities, because my kids won't be, Lord willing, having to go through a lot of the things that I went through.
That's extremely brave of you to share that, and I thank you so much. We're going to take a short break, and when we continue a conversation, we're going to get a closer look at some of the barriers at-risk young women face. See y'all after the break. You don't want to miss this.
Today, more than ever, you need fast, reliable internet. At Mediacom, we want you to know you can count on us. Our fiber-powered 100% gigabit technology network was built for the future. We have enormous capacity and power and 99.99% network reliability. So even though these are uncertain times, we're prepared, and you can be certain we'll keep your world connected.
Multiple studies have shown that marijuana can slow both driver reaction and response time, which can be really dangerous. He's here. He's here. Wait. What? I can't drive. Why? I'm high. Oh.
You told me not to talk to strangers. You told me not to cross the street without looking both ways.
You told me not to touch the stove. You told me not to do drugs. You told me not to drink and drive.
You gave me so many messages about how to stay safe. Why didn't you keep me safe by properly storing your gun?
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and we're talking with our friends from House of Hope. They have a lot to share about the needs of young women that face a lot of barriers. Dusky, what are some of the barriers that women face, and how do you deal with them?
So a lot of times when women come to us, they have multiple barriers. So it's not just one thing. It's not just that they can't afford their housing. It is transportation, childcare. They don't have the skills or the job history to earn a living wage in a career type employment. Trauma, tons of trauma. Being homeless is traumatic just by itself. And then a lot of our women have also come from abusive relationships or generational poverty. So when they get here, there's a lot to overcome. And like Megan mentioned, we call it, living in crisis. And so there's no, they don't even know where to start. And so that's why we have an amazing case management team. And Brooke is our family support and wellness case manager. So I'll let you just say what you do. Yeah. So I really focus on the whole family's health. So we work on increasing coping skills, stress management. I help women link to mental health programs in the community, help their kiddos get linked in with programming that can help support them while they're staying here, healing from some of that past trauma. So we really see the women where they're at. And so as they are overcoming some of those barriers of transportation and paying off old fines, old debt, they're also working on healing past hurts and then building their skill set so that when they leave, when they secure their own housing, they have a higher level of coping skills and wellness and health so that they can manage the new stress that will come their way. Because we know life is stressful. We know there's going to be hard times that come, but our hope is that when a family does overcome a lot of those barriers and they move on to secure housing in the community, they have a few more tools in their tool bag for managing the hard times.
Now, what were some of the tools, Megan, that you remember were really important to you?
So, like Dusky mentioned, just being able to admit that we had endured trauma. Looking back on it, I think it was pretty obvious from anyone looking in, but from me looking out, we hadn't been through trauma. We just had some bad experiences. And being able to name our trauma and to weep over it and deal with our feelings and be able to communicate as a family and to hear my kids' heart and things was very important. So a lot of the mental health helped us a lot. And then also financial. We had gone through 2 evictions because of, my inability, even with sometimes 4 jobs, to be able to pay rent. And so we had to, deal with that barrier. How do we find someone to rent to a 1 income person with 2 evictions on their record? We did have some transportation barriers at times, childcare barriers, and House of Hope just really helped us name it and overcome it through all the different programs.
Brooke, when we talk about barriers, some are physical barriers, things that you can teach and train, but they seem, based on what you're saying, to all be connected to mental health challenges as well. There's a strong necessity for some degree of resiliency. Is this a sort of an area that you also touch on?
Oh yeah. So kind of as Megan shared, just for women to just have an opportunity and time to be safe and stable, they can then process some of the trauma and some of the hurts that have happened to them and their children. So just that in and of itself helps heal, right? And then beyond that, if there's some other mental health symptoms, we can help them process some of that and then be another bridge to accessing mental health care in the community, which is a really tough feat as well. Just getting in, navigating that system is really scary. There's still an enormous mental health stigma. So I name it for a lot of families and just share like how, if they share with me some of their feelings or symptoms, then I'm always available should they want to make a phone call together. If they need help with childcare while they go to a mental health appointment, that's an enormous need. They need help getting medication. So just kind of navigating that whole system, we really try to support women because that's kind of that base level of that pyramid, right? We have to take care of our health and wellness first before we're going to be able to step up the ladder some, next levels of employment and take some other second steps. We really try to see women where they're at and their kiddos too. We try to see some of the needs that they might have and walk along families if they need somebody to join them at a school meeting for their kiddo. If kiddos having some behaviors, we have some kiddos that may get kicked out of a daycare. They might get sent home from school because of some of this trauma, because of some of this transition time. So we try to support women and their children through that as well.
These are all great points, and we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to invite our guests to share some final comments and insights that they've gained from their experience, things that may help you deal with a similar situation with your family or a friend. See y'all after the break. You don't want to miss this.
Every second, 127 new devices connect to the internet. You can feel it happening, our digital world expanding with every breath. We're entering a whole new era of connectivity, and MediaCom will be ready to power it with one of the nation's first 10G platforms. We'll be bringing you more speed, more capacity, more security, and the power to do more than you ever dreamed possible.
Whether it's advice on managing your anxiety or tools to help you stay grounded, Coping-19 provides a range of resources and self-care tips to help you cope with this pandemic. We can help. Find the resources that work best for you at coping-19.org.
Welcome back. Today on Surviving Bad, we're talking about House of Hope and how they're making a difference in the lives of at-risk young women. These are women that are neglected by the system and it takes the efforts of people like our guests to help them break the cycle of poverty and homelessness. I want to hear what they have to say in terms of advice, but there's a question here. You guys are in the Cedar Valley. What do you offer? What are you like, and where do people go when they can't find House of Hope?
Well, House of Hope is a standalone agency, so there aren't other Houses of Hope connected to us in the state. We aren't government funded, so we are constantly evolving and changing our programming to best meet the needs of the population that we serve. But there are other services for homelessness and poverty in every community. Right. So I would just say, like, an individual would just need to access some of, search for some of the services in their own community. Most organizations, if you call one and it's not their great fit, they can refer you to another service. I know there's some similar programming in Iowa City, Des Moines, and so everything's a little bit different though, so just trying to find the right fit. And we actually, like, if you called House of Hope and you were from a different area, we do a lot of referral too. I'll get online and I'll try to help somebody find resources. Even in other states, I get phone calls and, so anybody here can help with that too. Yep.
So somebody watching this show could call you guys up and know that they just won't be hung up on you. You're going to help them.
Oh, gosh, no. Yeah.
Okay.
No, we don't hang up on people.
I believe that.
We're in the business of helping. Yeah.
Megan, you're a board member. You work with your church and faith community. How important is that message getting out to people that maybe don't understand the plight of at-risk young women?
Yeah, I think it's so important, because if women neglect taking care of themselves and their kids because of the stigma, we just run the risk of this cycle continuing and our kids running the same trauma cycles and the same poverty cycles and the same homelessness cycles that we're experiencing. So I would say to the mom out there that's feeling unsure of reaching out because of the stigma, do it for your kids, swallow your pride, get some help, make a better tomorrow for your children.
Well, thank you so very much for all of you joining us today and sharing your story. And thank all of you for watching. Check out our website at healthyiowa.org for more information. And keep your eye on MediaCom MC22 for our next episode of Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. And MediaCom MC22, your local programming leader.